Hello friends, my name's Real Emile. Welcome back to some more Forza Horizon 2. Today we shall be doing the Retro Muscle Championship, and we start out with me flicking to the wrong source on my TV. There we go, we're on the right source now. We start with the 1990 Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z, and we are going to be speaking about some 90s muscle cars, I think, today, because I actually quite like them. We're going to start with this Camaro, and I have a ZL1 in my garage. Wait, is it the ZL1? No, sorry, ZR1 Corvette, which we will probably end up switching to. We might even switch to a, forgot the name of it. Corvette. Oh, there we go. I thought my game had crashed for a second there. Yeah, so 90s muscle cars are a bit weird. I'm going to kind of explain the history of the muscle car to you now. I'm going to sort of shorten it out and stretch some bits out. That's a cool looking Mustang. Is that the Celine Racing Mustangs? I'm definitely going to have to find my paint job for my STV Cobra. That thing looks sick. Anyway, so basically in the 60s, muscle cars started out. The first one, I believe, was the Pontiac GTO. That was the first one to like really gain some ground. And now, of course, Ford saw that and ended up bringing out the Mustang, which pretty much dominated the market. Yeah, that's all well and good. And of course, during the 60s, it was really muscle cars were the flavour of the decade. They had lots of them. They all come in different shapes and sizes and so on and so forth, all with varying degrees of horsepower. I believe the most ever out of one was about 600 horsepower, and that was in a Ford Galaxy, not the people carrier. However, in 1975, I believe it was, unfortunately, fuel shortages and other things kind of killed off the muscle car. People needed more environmentally friendly cars and stuff that got more miles per gallon and so on and so forth. Fuel consumption was, for the first time in America's history, really a big part of buying choices. And basically, ooh god, I hit something there. I'm not sure quite what I hit. Basically, all the muscle cars that were around basically went. Chevrolet Chevelle went. I'm just trying to think of some others. Pontiac GTO, I believe that one went. It returned in the 2000s. It was basically a Holden Monaro, but yeah, that one returned eventually, and so on. However, a couple of names sticks around. More sort of, I don't know what's the word. The most recognised of these names were Mustang and Camaro. The Mustang became sort of the Mustang 2 in 1978, I believe. Which made it bloody awful. There's a King Cobra, which has been recently added to Horizon 2. I was going to drive that today, but it's not in the Retro Muscle Car Championship. Thank God. That thing has, I think it's somewhere in the region of about 120 brake horsepower from a 5-litre V8. Which, yeah, I mean, I know it's probably fuel efficient and so on, but yeah. And before you say, oh, well, you should have just bought a Camaro. Well, Camaros didn't fare too well either. Sure, during the 70s and so on, I think they did reasonably okay. However, there were, at one point, I'm not sure which generation it was. However, there was a Camaro that produced 90 horsepower. Just 90 horsepower. Out of a Chevrolet Camaro. You know, when the originals, bear in mind, the original Mustang had about 260 horsepower. The original Camaro was around that as well. At least the high-spec models were. Which, yeah, that's a huge horsepower decrease. And of course, as you can imagine, even with these sort of huge power decreases and downgrades and so on to make these cars more fuel efficient, I don't think they particularly sold well. By the 80s, stuff had started getting a little bit better. And by the early 90s, that's when muscle cars started to get a bit of their muscle back. This IROC-Z, for example, has, I believe from stock, this has about 215 horsepower. I think I'm correct on that. And of course, you had the 1992 SVT Cobra R Mustang, which had about 220 brake horsepower, which that sort of pumped some more credibility to these names, because obviously Camaro and Mustang had sort of become, you know, a lot of people started forgetting about the first generations and just remembering the awful second and third generations of these cars. This is where I start kind of liking these cars, particularly this Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z I'm in. The IROC-Z, at least in my opinion, this Camaro, okay, no Camaro before this looked this good, and no Camaro after this has looked this good. I absolutely adore this sort of coupe body style. I mean, that 92 Mustang, yeah, it does look a little bit datey, but it's certainly not a bad car, per se. So the IROC-Z would probably be my favourite Camaro ever, probably my favourite Chevrolet muscle car ever. This thing is pretty awesome. It looks awesome, and of course the muscle cars started to get their bite back. And this sort of continued slowly and slowly. There was a new 90's Mustang, I believe by 1998, the SVT Cobra Mustangs were pushing out about 300 horsepower. And by 2000, which is the model in this game, I believe they were pushing almost 400 horsepower. A lot of people say that the car that really kick-started the new muscle car sort of, what's the word? The new muscle car, I'm forgetting words left, right and centre today, I do apologise. Revolution, I guess, reincarnation, was an SVT Cobra Mustang. I can't quite remember the name of it. It had a supercharger on it. It produced about 600 horsepower. Me personally, I would disagree with that, because I've never personally heard of that car before. Some players on Forza decided to shout about how much they wanted it. So basically, I think sort of Ford's new Mustang, which was the 2005 Mustang, sure, it only had, well, it had around 300 horsepower when it was relaunched, but then, you know, Chevrolet pulled their fingers out of their arses and started producing the new Camaro in 2010, I believe that car came out in. And of course you had the new Dodge Challenger, because the Challenger name was resurrected. In fact, so was Charger, although that was put onto a four-door saloon car. So, yeah, by the sort of turn of the decade, 2010s, muscle cars were back, and well, they're just getting even more crazier now. The 2013 Shelby GT500 produces 663 horsepower. The Camaro ZL1 produces 580 brake horsepower. Looking at stuff like Corvettes, which got really sort of diced within the 80s. I mean, here's something for you. The C3 Corvette, you know, the Stingray, the one everyone remembers. Yeah, that car wasn't quite as good as you remember it being, because in its final year, 1982, that car produced 182 horsepower. Yeah, that's exactly the same horsepower you get from a 1997 Honda Civic Type R. So for all you people who go, your Honda's as powerful as a lawnmower, remember, in 1982, your car had exactly the same power as a Honda Civic Type R. No offense to muscle car guys. So, yeah. Now the cars are sort of hit now in 2015, obviously. We've got the new breed of cars coming. There's a brand new Camaro, which is the ZR1? I can't remember. Have they already bought a ZL1 out? Whatever. Anyway, that car's in this game. It's running about 500 and something horsepower, I believe. Pretty powerful car. We've switched to the Corvette now, which apparently has the pop-up headlights, which are a bit broken. So that's fun. Just as I said, how much I love these sort of 90s muscle cars. And of course you have Dodge, who have bought out the maddest muscle car of them all so far, the Hellcat. The 707 horsepower behemoth. Which truly, at least for me, at least in my mind, is probably the maddest muscle car of them all. Yeah, I truly believe that. Now, of course, despite the fact I do like these 90s muscle cars, as they sort of started the resurgence a little bit of the muscle car, there were some issues with these cars. Particularly, they still didn't particularly handle the corners very well. This C4 Corvette wasn't exactly known for its handling, or the fact that it didn't stay together very well. There was a couple of quality issues with the 90s Corvettes, and indeed with the 90s Camaros and 90s Mustangs and so on. And yeah, sort of they didn't stay together very well, so that's kind of why these cars are not remembered very fondly. However, I do think they do definitely deserve a bit of a sort of spotlight, as they saw the comeback of the muscle car, or at least the early beings of it. So yeah, there's my quick sort of lecture on retro muscle cars. I've just noticed there, the Buick GSX, that's a very interesting car. Made in 1987, the Buick GSX produced 300 horsepower, which was, well, considering what sort of the SVT Cobras and IROC-Zs were pushing out at the time. Yeah, there's a bit more power than they were used to. However, that car is extremely interesting because instead of having the usual big V8, that car only had a V6 with 2 turbochargers on it. Which is a very odd thing. You look at that car and you think, oh yeah, that's got a V8 in it easily. But no, it's got a V6, which is a very, very odd. We'll switch back to cockpit mode. I also like it how the new C7 Corvette has basically got the dashboard from this car, which is kind of cool. As far as what muscle car I'd own from this time period, I love this Camaro, and I love, that Camaro, and I love this Corvette. You know, personally, at least in my opinion, the C4 Corvette is personally my favourite Corvette of the lot. I do like the C7. I like the C6 ZR1 because it's mental and extremely quick around our track. But for me, this is probably my favourite model of Corvette, and that IROC-Z is definitely my favourite model of Camaro. As far as other models go, I mean, the ZL1 Camaro from 2012, that's kind of a cool car. I like that one purely because it can take corners, which is strange for muscle cars, but yeah, that one can actually go around corners. It's I believe it's 1 second slower, around the Nürburgring than a Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera, to give you an idea of the insaneness of that Camaro. So yeah, I mean, at least in my opinion, these were sort of the Chevrolet golden years. I mean, I assume owning one of these cars isn't particularly nice, but hey, if I lived in America, I'd probably have a 90s Camaro, to be honest with you. Yeah, I do like the look of this car, and I like the colour it comes in as well. There's something about it that's really cool, and sure, the C5 kind of improved upon it, but I do really like this ZR1. But we do need something that can wade through stuff a bit. What do we go for? We got pretty much everything here. Let's take a Viper Rallycross Racing. Ah yes, because this is the car which sort of, at least in my opinion, was the car that made sort of Chevrolet kick the Corvette into overdrive and actually told them to sort of, hey, maybe you want to spend a little bit more effort on your Corvette, because that was sort of America's premier sports car until the Viper came on. You see, in 1992, Dodge released the Viper. This car had a 8-litre V10 tuned by Lamborghini. I believe it was made by Lamborghini, actually. Which made this car absolutely insane. So it produced 400 horsepower. Excuse me. And yeah, Chevrolet responded in 1995 with that ZR1 you just saw, which produced 405 horsepower. And then Chrysler responded with the 450 horsepower Viper GTS, i.e. this car. And then after that, of course, Chevrolet released the C5 Corvette, which, you know, it had a couple of nice little tweaks, you could say, to it, to make it sort of fight the Viper a bit more. I believe the Z06 is insanely quick, about 300 odd horsepower from that car, but I think it can do, like, some people say it's really good on a track, on a drag racing course. I don't know, because I don't really pay attention to drag races. But yeah, so the the Viper's what you can kind of say maybe kickstarted Chevrolet, and that's sort of what you need in the car world. You know, I mean, if Ford hadn't come along with the 2005 Mustang, if Dodge hadn't come along for the Viper, maybe muscle cars would have truly died out at this point, or would have carried on, but as sort of shadows of their former selves. So yeah, that's personally why I think competition in the car world is a good thing, and that's why I think maybe these 90s muscle cars deserve a little bit more respect than they get. I mean, certainly, obviously, the Viper does get all the respect in the world because it's mental. But yeah, I think maybe you should take another look at those 90s muscle cars and just go, aren't we happy to have them about? At least we're a damn sight happier than with the Mustang 2. But anyway, well, that's the end of this championship. We have won every single race in this championship. I haven't driven on Horizon 2 in ages, so that's kind of a miracle we actually did that. So I want to thank you all very much for watching and listening to my lecture, and until next time, farewell.